Voice and Vision.
I am the voice, Carl Andrews.
Oh my God. She took it and run!
Oh! I just kicked her!
What? Whoa!
Alongside One Vision, Dave the Eye Rules.
Winner! Oh my God, he's not! Oh my God!
Guys, welcome back to another episode of the Voice and Vision podcast. I am the voice, Carl Andrews, and of course, he's joining with me,
Dave the Eye Rules.
Dave
Yes.
the Eye Rules. What's up, Dave? How you doing?
Yeah, not so bad, not so bad. Missed it last week, but you know, we didn't have a lot kind of going on. We've kind of saved ourselves for this week, haven't we?
That's right, we did have a lot going on because this week we have a very special guest, and that is a former UPW champion in Dan Magee. Dan, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, thank you for having me, gents. Thank you for having me. I
it's an
think you
absolute
need
pleasure.
to remind them I'm also the saviour of UPW, not just a former champ. I am the saviour of UPW.
Yes, the saviour, that's
Yeah.
right. Rocking,
Yeah, we were there.
rocking
I
a
saw
very-
it. I saw it.
Rocking a very thick beard.
I am, yeah, that's lockdown boredom for you, lockdown laziness, should we say. But I've had no reason to look presentable, so I'm just growing it out.
How has this year been for you?
Oh, I think with everyone, it's been very up and down. I think in all honesty, if I look back and I give myself a long, hard look in the mirror, like I needed that break from wrestling when it first came about. There are a few things like I'd essentially been going since I stepped through the training doors six and a half years ago. And I was just getting burnt out a bit. So, when old Johnson was like, we'll have, 2-week circuit break and then we'll be buzzing, I was like, yeah, I can take that. That'll do me. And it's just gone on a lot longer, hasn't it?
It's been a year nearly, isn't it now?
Right, that's it. So, it's, it has been tough.
Matrix.
That's it. Like, I don't know. Like, it was the first lockdown was pretty good. It's the novelty of not having to work and essentially being paid by the government to watch TV and play video games. It's lovely. That's very quickly worn thin, hasn't it? And,
Yeah, of course it does.
This whole now stop-start, especially over these colder winter months, it's not been great. But hey, we're all in the same boat. We can all only pull together, keep in touch with one another and keep us ticking over.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that is all that anybody can do, isn't it? It's just, keep going, stay strong, and eventually we'll be getting out of this eventually, won't we?
That's it. Like, I mean, obviously, don't get me wrong, I've missed the wrestling loads. But otherwise, I've not been that affected, really. Like, I've been off work, I've been put onto furlough, as I said, but, there are a lot more people out there who are still having to go into work, work a lot harder, all of your public services and everything. And I know it's a cliche. I know everyone's saying it now, but they're the ones who really deserve the respect, I think, and deserve the honour for what they've put themselves through over the last year and for this foreseeable as well. We don't know when it's going to end yet.
Yeah, that's right. I agree. I agree with that, don't you, Dave? I mean, you work in the NHS, don't you, Dave?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm an NHS worker. I'm not in the job to kind of get pats on the back and the
I don't
claps
think
that
anyone
we had
is.
on the Thursdays, but no, it's just doing our bit and kind of carrying on. And I've had a bit of that jealousy actually. Yeah, people being at home, being paid and all that, and I'm kind of carrying on. But we're doing our best, and we managed to get through it. I've had all the masks and all the gloves and all the aprons that I've needed, and kind of managed to kind of just carry on. But I'm a sociable person. I miss being around the wrestling business, and I've seen you, Dan. You saying how long you've kind of been in it. It's us. We see kind of behind the scenes, and we see you turn up and help out, set up the ring, and all the extra.
First one in, last one out.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's it. Well, you know, that's something I always try to instill, because I do sort of like the beginners coaching down at the Rev Pro school, the Portsmouth School of Wrestling. And that's something I always try to instill into all of sort of my students who walk through the door. You know, if they've been there for roughly about a month and I can see that they're interested and they want to go this full whack, like you tell them that's what you've got to do, first in, last out. I remember my first week of training, I trained on a Sunday and then on a Wednesday. And then the following Sunday, Rev Pro were running a Sharping Sittingbourne. And I had no idea where Sittingbourne was at the time, in all honesty. But the lad who got me into it, he sort of said, "Oh, I'm going up to help with the show. Do you want to come afterwards?" And like after training. So we jumped in the car with, 3 other trainees. So it's a full car of us. And yeah, we went and watched the show and then helped pack down, not just the ring, the lighting rig, everything, it's just, I was instilled from a very early, or my very early wrestling age, should I say, that it's more than just being in the ring, there's so much more for shows, which I do unfortunately feel there are some people who don't quite see that as much nowadays, which is a shame.
I agree with that. There is so much more that goes into that than just what goes on in the squared circle.
Right, that's it.
Is.
Even the smallest things up to like setting out the seats for the crowd to sit down in.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous how much you don't think about when you don't see it. You know what I mean? So
that's where I started.
yeah, exactly.
Right.
I mean, I was the same. I put chairs out.
I think that's it. I think that's the, as silly as it sounds, when you do that, you earn the respect, and then you keep pushing through. You know what I mean? And like we've had people come through our school. Like there's this one lad who's probably the most gifted or naturally talented wrestler we've had. But his attitude absolutely stunk, and he very rarely made it onto our sort of like contender shows, which are our trainee shows.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm first to admit, he was, his talent was much better than mine was when I was on the main shows as part of the contenders division and that. And you could hear in his voice, and you could see him getting frustrated by it, but then he never adjusted his attitude to help. And that's all. It's just himself he's got to blame for that. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I think that's the thing that goes missing a lot, is the respect.
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken about this now quite a few times on different shows now about the respect and about young guys coming through. The way nowadays is so much different to the way it used to be, maybe than when you came into the business was very different to what it is now. And there seems to be not so much disrespect, but there just seems to be a lot of ego. Like, oh, I've had one match, I can wrestle. I'm a wrestler.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work like that.
No, I think that's it. Like I said, I don't think I don't think it is disrespect. I think it's, I think it's a lack of respect, which for me is different to disrespect. But it's, that's just, as you say, that's the way it is now. That's the way they're being brought in and being nurtured for it. And unfortunately, that seems to be just the going rate even more nowadays. So, hopefully you'll still get the odd gem coming through helping out. Like I've always made it a point whenever I've obviously run the ring at a show, I've always made a point to thank anybody who's helped, even if it was just carrying the odd beam in here or there.
I mean, we've done that. Dave, you do that.
We get stuck in, don't we? Yeah.
That's it, because it's a team effort at the end of the day,
I remember when you turned around to me and said, "Can you do the ratchets under the ring, Carl?" We were in Weymouth Pavilion. And I looked at you as in like, you're joking, Look, you want me to get on the floor and do the ratchets?
Well, but still, you did it, I think, if I remember rightly.
I did,
so,
only just.
Yeah.
He struggles doing his own shoelaces sometimes.
That's right. I gave you a crash course in it and you picked it up like a champ. So, yeah, you did all right.
It's Andy that trained you, isn't it, Dan?
Yes. So both Andy Simmons and Andy Crawden were the head trainers, and then we sometimes not so much sort of like towards the end of much sort of like start bulk of training, I'd say. But I came into the tail end of Marty Skull being there quite a bit as well. So even if he wasn't necessarily jumping in the ring with us all the time, but he'd be giving us, little pointers here and there. And that was around the time of him, blowing up with PWG and, everything. So, yeah, that was absolutely invaluable. And then because of his ties, Andy Corden's had a lot of guest trainers come in, which again, it's just so nice to see different sort of all these different styles of training coming from all around the world, picking the bits which you like and which work best for you and molding them into your own sort of like form. It's but yeah, for me, Simmons is definitely my big sort of like my big trainer. Like he taught me, I hope, everything he knew. Yeah.
Oh, he's taught you to do good heel work, good characters, and with the rest of the lads, it's just been a really great combination.
It has.
As we maybe turn it onto a SFP kind of discussion a bit. My favourite topic.
That's my favourite as well, Dave. Don't you worry, it's my favourite as well. I can see Carl's a bit unsure already, but
he's just worried he's going to get knocked off his table again.
It's all right. I'm not there with you today, Carl. Don't worry. I'm sat in my lovely front room. Yeah, no, SFP was a very. It was something that grew so organically, and I think that comes across, and it works well. I still remember there was, I was bringing the ring down. I was obviously on most shows for Mark and Robbie, but there were a couple I still wasn't on, and then he ran the 3 shows over the summer at the Weymouth Pavilion, and on the second show, he sort of said to me, "Right, you're turning heel against Eddie Ryan tonight after tagging in with him, because we want to put you alongside Max Castle."
Mm-hmm.
And now, so this was obviously at the time when Adam De Silva had taken a break from UPW and wrestling in general, as I remember it. And I'll be honest, I was hesitant at the idea at first. I knew I could do the hill work because I'd done a lot of it on the camps, sort of like for the last couple of years, because it's the best place to pick up and learn that sort of aspect, right? But I didn't want to just be seen as a Adam 2.0. So I didn't want it to just be, oh, well, Adam is out, so we'll just bring somebody else in for Max to be the bodyguard for. I wanted it to be something a little bit different. And then I was sort of like talking with Mark, and I was, pitching the ideas of having, instead of just one bodyguard, having a second, or just having a smaller group of people. And I'd already tagged with Rob Lias on a few shows in UPW, so it's like, look, that's sort of got life in it. There was a few of the fans christened us Goose and Maverick from Top Gun. From obviously one of our looks, I think we came out with the old sunglasses on one of the shows. And
was it the DVD or something like that as well, or something somebody had in the crowd?
I think that all stemmed from it. I think it was initially, I think it was Dave Brooks started the chant, if I remember rightly, and then the DVD got brought into it, and it all evolved. But so I pitched Robbie coming in, and he came along for a show just to do a small segment with us. And then as we were going into the anniversary, sort of like Mark said to us that Adam was ready to come back as well, and he'd essentially be joining us as well to be a strong foreman. And just all the ideas we have just seem to bounce off one another so well. Like it really is a heck of a lot of fun for something that, for myself personally, I was a little bit hesitant about at first. But yeah, I definitely think there's a lot still to come as well, which is always good. Not so
Yeah.
much for you, Carl. I can see you're worried again,
Wow.
but yeah, it's. I think there is. You know, when we can finally get back to shows, we'll be pushing a lot more again. You know.
On a serious note, anyway, breaking
Yeah.
kayfabe and all of that. But you don't get that many dominant factions anymore, especially over here in the UK as well. You don't get them. And if you do get them, you don't normally get them to be as popular as that. Not only were you the heels, that the people were booing, but they were also cheering you at the same time because, and they're buying the merchandise and they love it because the build up from that night, I wouldn't even say it was from that night either. I mean, it could have been from the first Weymouth show, that first Weymouth show in 2018.
Yeah.
I think, who did you face? You faced Lance Cole.
Yeah.
I think from there, all the way up until, the last point is a really building story that really, to me, is a sell point.
Yeah.
I think, again, I think that's it. It's like, don't get me wrong. When I watch wrestling, I like all the, cool stuff and all the flashy acrobats, right? But the thing that constantly draws me back is story, and whether it's just a one-off match story or something that you can build long over months, over years, as we've done, you know what I mean? I think for me, that's what keeps the fans engaged. That's what keeps them wanting to see more, and I've tried to be very careful myself, and I know the other lads have as well, to, as much as we do get some of the cheers, we're not trying to get cheers, you know what I mean? Like, nowadays, especially in wrestling, there are so many quote unquote cool heels who they'll be the heel in terms of they'll be the ones controlling their match and they may do the odd sneaky thing, but they're still doing it because they think it looks cool and they know it'll get the cheers. For me and the rest of the group as well, I know we're just so focused on, we want to be booed, like if you're booing us, that's essentially cheers for us, because that's what we're trying to get across. And you guys may see it, like there'll be times when maybe I'm getting cheered or clapped and I won't react to that in a positive manner. I'll react to that negatively and I'll get up in the fans' face and be moaning at them and shouting at them because I don't want the cheers, you know what I mean? And I think all of that just plays in. We're very, we're known amongst the sort of local fans as well, and there's a good fan base with UPW. We can get them involved a little bit as well, and it's entertaining. It's more than just 2 guys, 3 guys, whatever it's 4 guys in a tag match fighting in the ring. It's getting that crowd involved. It's almost like that panto vibe of bringing someone up on stage or something, you know what I mean? Even though they're not coming into the ring, like it's that's what we aim to do. Really, is mainly entertain. That's the first and foremost goal.
I mean, you said at the beginning of the show that as we were going into this lockdown, it was almost like it was a little bit of relief because you felt like you were going to get a nice break, because you felt like you were a bit burnt out. Now, I know how that feels. We all know how that feels.
Oh, yeah.
Right, yeah.
So through 2019, I mean, even off the top of my head, I'm going to say you're on the majority of the shows they had that year.
Yeah, I think I was on all of them but one, and I was there and I commentated on the main event on that one with you guys.
Yeah.
And again, it made sense. I was there with the ring, so if I'm going to be there anyway, I'm ready to go. But it was, and even with the, I think for that show when I did the commentating, Mark was, he was almost happy to almost give me that night off. You know what I mean? But I actually sort of pitched to him about, well, why don't I do like a guest commentator spot as you're doing this number one contenders? So it is like the champ checking out what's happening, you know. So I don't even think any of the boys were on that show. I know it was
nobody
legitimately
was.
the day after Rob Lyce's wedding, and
Yeah.
I was feeling a little delicate. I remember that much. Yeah, it was. So I was almost happy not to be needed to be running around in the ring, you know. But yeah, it was. I'm there. Like if you're out of sight, you're out of mind. You know what I mean? So that's what. Oh, that's why I still wanted to at least be involved, be out on the stage, doing commentary with you boys, whatever it might have been. You know, even if it's just you're going in the ring to cut a quick promo and you're getting taken out by someone, like I'd have done that, you know, just to keep that freshness in people's minds still, let them know that I am still there. And obviously I was then able to build that into for me, my best promo I've cut on a live audience on the last show we had before the lockdown. Sort of like the show after I lost the belt, and the fact that I was still there and the champion was gone. He decided not to show up. And again, I didn't plan for that 2019 period. I didn't be like, right, I'm going to do all of this because it will lead to that point. But it was then able to, when I was on that show cutting the promo, I was able to look back and be like, right, well, what can I mold from this? What truths can I tell from this? Because that's for me, they're the best heels, are the ones who tell the truth, you know. And you make the audience feel stupid, and that's what they then hate you for even more, you know.
Calling people out, you know, yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's it. I mean, like, I heard it best from Jericho when he was talking about his run of his turn in 2008, I think it was, after Mania 24, when he was calling all the crowd hypocrites and everything. And that's because they were cheering for Shawn Michaels, who was a cheat. You know, he faked a knee injury to win a match, yet the crowd was cheering that, and he was calling them out for being a hypocrite, and he was right. The crowd didn't like the fact that he was right, and that's why they then didn't like him. You know what I mean? Obviously, he did a lot more other stuff, but it's just that initial psychology. People don't like being told when they're wrong. So I will always, I will embellish the truth a little bit at times, just to, you know, give a slightly paranoid edge to it all. But I will still try to make it as close to the bone and real as possible. And even if I'm in, you know, if I'm in other promotions and I've got, you know, I'm working face there and I've got heels cutting promos on me, I'm sort of suggesting the same sort of thing, you know, like, this has worked for me in the past, this might work with you if you can mold and find something. So yeah, that's always been sort of like my viewpoint pretty much since coming back. Well, coming back to wrestling, should I say, to watching it.
How long has your career been so far?
So I started training in the summer of 2014. I think it would have been in July, and I made my debut in January 2015 in our sort of like yearly Revolution Rumble, Royal Rumble type event.
I know that.
Yeah. So yeah, it was about 5 years when we all shut down. Just over 5 years of being on shows, and about 6 years now.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because I remember your debut for UPW, because I believe I was on commentary and it was my second show.
Oh, okay.
Who did you face? You faced Jekyll. It was in Street.
Yes, in the big sports hall.
Yeah, that's right.
Was. I think you had Mike Skull, Mark Haskins on the show that day.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, again, that came from being fortuitous, you know.
That was
the same thing I say about
you had the ring,
didn't you? Ring stuff. That's it. Yes. So I'd just been put onto the van insurance for the ring, to drive the ring van, and you know, Marty at the time was living in Portsmouth, which is obviously where I'm from, where the ring's kept, and he needed bringing to the show. So, you know, Simmons asked me if I could go along with it, and as a sort of like return, I'd be put on the show. I'd met Mark a couple of times before, but not. I don't think he'd ever sort of like properly seen me work. He'd had Simmons had sort of like vouched for me before, but I think I was actually booked for a tag match with Rob Lias on the October show of that year, and then over the summer, sort of like Mark was at one of the big Rev Pro shows we had up in London, and during the halftime interval, I remember talking to him with Simmons, and that's when they were talking about this show in Street, and sort of like it was there. Simmons was like, "Oh yeah, well Dan can come along with the van if you've got a spot for him," and it went from there. So yeah, it was obviously that was totally new to me. It was wrestling in front of a new crowd for the first time, or a new promotion, should I say. Obviously, I've done new crowds on the camps and things, but an actual new promotion, that was my first outside of my home promotion.
Oh, really?
And yeah.
Oh, so you
it
had
was,
not been anywhere else other than Rev Pro
other
and the
than Rev
camps
Pro.
at the time?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, that's it. And even the camps, I'd literally only done a weekly camp in Selsey, which Quilden runs, and then the odd couple around sort of like Hayling, the Isle of Wight, which Simmons ran. So it was, I think I did one down in, I think it was in Weymouth still, which Condé Kate ran at the time, which Mark actually, I think that was one of his last matches. He wrestled Charleston on that show. But that was my first ever match away from my home promotion, like having that safety net almost, you know. So yeah, that's and that's why I've always thanked Mark for giving me that option to get out there, and you know.
Let's talk about. I want to talk about your relationship with Rob Lias.
My relationship. What are you implying there, Carl?
No, nothing really. No, I'm guessing that you two are quite good friends.
Yeah, so I actually knew Rob before wrestling. Like, again, this has been covered on a few other podcasts from both of us, but we used to play football together. So like just the basic Sunday league in the Portsmouth before our wrestling days. And yeah, I'll be honest, like the team he was playing for was a sort of spin-off of one I'd played for when I was about 18. And then we just happened to end up on the same team. After a season, all of my sort of like college mates and schoolmates decided to start our own team because one of the lads, his aunt and uncle, ran a local pub in Portsmouth. So we started a local pub team for them. We're very successful in our first year. We won one of the leagues and one of the cups. And then during the second, and it was after that season was when I started my training. So I probably hadn't spoken to Rob for like probably about a year. I'd have said, like we were the Facebook friends as you are with everybody, but we weren't necessarily close by any means. And then I just posted about, you know, my first match coming up, as I say, 6 months into my training, and he messaged me and was like, "Oh, that's really cool to see this. Like, can I come along? Like, what's the details?" So he actually ended up being involved in my in the crowd in my first show, and then I think the day later or 2 days later, he sent me another message like, "Oh, that was really great, mate. Like, how did you get into this? I'd be interested." He came along, so the show would have been at the weekend. He came along on the Wednesday, and you know, the rest is history. I think we just click anyway. We've got the same sort of the same sort of interests.
Yeah.
So obviously we both like football, so when we're on the road together, we can talk for days about that. He's got a really interesting story. He used to live out in Spain, sort of like for most of his teenage years. So he's always got a lot of interesting things to talk about as well. And yeah, it grew from there, really, I suppose.
I mean, here's the
we
scoop.
are just friends.
The scoop on that is that Rob Lias will be joining us on here next week.
Boom!
There we go. Very good. Yeah, he's got a lot of good stories. So
Yeah, he messaged
I'll-
me,
I'll-
and as soon as he found out you were on here, he messaged me and he goes, "I want to come on and I want to talk to you guys." I was like, "Yeah, all right then, yeah." So he seems to be
Dan
quite
beat him
keen on
to
that
it.
as well.
that's
Just-
it. Yeah,
just-
no.
Just to
Sorry,
get the
go on,
heads
Dave.
up, Dan,
Yeah.
you're a Liverpool fan, yeah?
I am a Liverpool
right?
fan. Correct.
So-
Yes, it is.
So who does Rob support?
So Rob is a Pompey fan. I believe from from the conversations we have, I think he's probably a Madrid fan as well, especially sort of like living out there. But I'll give him his due. I'll never say this to his face, but he's probably going to listen to this. And
You're in a
this
safe
anyway,
place.
But,
Yeah.
I am. But he's a knowledgeable football guy anyway. And I think it helps with Portsmouth being, unfortunately down in League One as it is at the moment. He's able to be quite non-biased just with sort of like all the Premier League football clubs and stuff. Like, I've got a couple of friends who are Man United fans, and I'd never like to admit to their face how good a season they're doing, but they are, unfortunately. But I would never again tell them that. But he's able to say that while also saying Liverpool were doing okay last year when we did, etc. I've
It's
actually
not
got
like
a
being a
theory on
Millwall
that.
fan, is it, Dave?
Hey, I'm used to being in League Two, League One, Championship, back down again and up and down.
Yeah, I know the feeling from a Birmingham supporter, mate. So
I feel sorry for you boys, honestly, I do.
Tragic, isn't it?
that's what we were brought up with, though.
Well, that's it. That's the thing for me as well. Is like a lot of people, especially in the modern world where Liverpool are doing well as a team again. I get the classic, but you're from down south, you're a glory hunter, blah blah blah, and it's like, well, I can see the line of thinking, but the reason I got into football was the World Cup '98. My first memory of football is Michael Owen's goal against Argentina,
Okay, yeah.
and it was a case of like, I like him, I'm going to support him, and then a few years went by, and that was when Portsmouth got promoted to the Premier League, and I'd actually gone to quite a few Pompey games and stuff, but there were so many of my friends who at the time, we'd have been probably about 10 or 11, I'd have thought, who were, I support this club in the Premier League or I support that club, who suddenly, no, I've always been a Pompey fan my whole life, and they were just my Premier League team. And like, to me, that was no different to them only supporting Pompey when they got up to the Premier League than me supporting Liverpool because they were doing well. So through stubbornness, I've stuck with them. So yeah, obviously I want Portsmouth to do well. Don't get me wrong. When we had old Hikuleo over, sort of like training down with us, we actually took him to one of the Portsmouth games when we could still go into the stadium, and yeah, it was a real good experience again, But I'm first and foremost a Liverpool fan.
I'm really, really old, Dan. So I remember, Liverpool in the '80s and Rush goalie, in the playground and all that. It was a magnificent team back then. You know what I mean? But yeah, I kind of, I kind of more went to rugby. But hey, that's another story.
That's fair. Yeah, that's something I've never really got into fully. Like, I'll watch it every now and then, and I sort of understand it. I've only ever played one rugby game, and I scored the winning try, so I was happy with that. But yeah, otherwise, I couldn't tell you much about. I couldn't hold a conversation in it, I'm afraid, Dave.
Yeah, that's fine.
You were in a band, weren't you?
I was, yeah. So
Because I believe the music that you use, when you're wrestling is it's called Sapphire, isn't it?
It is, yeah, and it's one of the songs I wrote. I started playing, when I went to secondary school. Started playing guitar, picked that up, did a few of the school concerts and things, and I just started writing as well. It's funny looking back, sort of like I've recently moved house, so we're clearing through old bits and pieces in my parents' house, and we came across some like old poems essentially from when I was, infant, junior age, and you can definitely see the where that's sort of like them flowing through into my songwriting, So yeah, I'm actually, I've got a degree in music performance, which I got in preparation to go into teaching, and then
Oh, nice.
through different through different reasons, I ended up finding wrestling, but because my band had already recorded this EP, I showed the song to Simmons one day, and he's like, "That should be your entrance music," and yeah, it just picked up from there, and that's what I'm running with. But yeah, it's funny. So the band was called Vic Vincent and the Firebirds. Vic Vincent because it was my one of my close mates' two middle names, and the Firebirds because I'd read about the Freebirds in wrestling and their the Freebird rule for tag team, and I thought it'd be really cool to name a band after them, and named it wrong. Instead of calling it the Freebirds, I called it the Firebirds, and yeah, that just then sort of like stuck from there. So yeah, there's I try to get in touch with the bandmates and meet up at least once or twice a year. We've obviously not really been able to with what's going on at the moment, but it'd be nice to play again. But there's just so much time. We've all got lives, we've all got jobs. Obviously, with me wrestling on the weekends as well, it's pretty non-existent. Any spare weekends I have, I'm usually sleeping. So,
I mean,
it's growing a beard.
All growing a beard, yeah.
I mean, I did it for 15 years, and I was self-taught.
Nice.
I played bass, and then that pushed me on to playing guitar after playing bass, and then I think after that, I bought Guitar Hero. And I bought it with the whole band kit, with the drum kit and everything. And I was playing that drum kit thinking, oh my God, I reckon I could do this. And I went and bought one. And just like that. And I just picked it up just like that. But again, I don't think I haven't done anything like that since, 2014, I think the last time I played.
Wow, fair. Yeah, that's probably around the same sort of time as me, to be honest, because we were definitely still playing when I started training, and like I say, just through different avenues, it fell to the wayside a little bit, unfortunately. But yeah,
well, that's it. I mean, life gets in the way, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it didn't help as well. So the band met on it's a foundation degree course. So we did 2 years at one of the local colleges doing this foundation degree, and that's where the band was formed and everything. And then the following year, I went off to uni, only in Southampton, so only just down the road from us. But I went off to complete my degree, whereas they all took a gap year and then went the following year. So I think that was a little bit disjointed for us. And then that was when the year they finished was the summer I started wrestling training. And, we'd planned to have one day a week solely for the for band practice and stuff, because again, like our plans were to try and get somewhere with it, but if you want to get somewhere, you've got to treat it like a job, just like you do with pro wrestling. There's nothing wrong with people who maybe just want to do it as a hobby or aren't too sure what they want out of it, but if you have aspirations to make something a career, you need to work towards that, in my opinion. And so unfortunately it all just fell to the wayside. Like I say, it just fell to the wayside. But yeah, playing was, I mean, Carl, you'll probably know it. It's like such a great rush, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the first band I was in, gigs and recorded a few CDs and stuff. But when I split up from them, and then I had about a year's break, and then I went back, and then I got back into it again. But then I started recording myself, and I was recording my own music, and I was doing it with my brother. But then I got married, and and I had more children, and it was time to move on as well.
Sure.
And then I found wrestling. Yeah. Well, I've been a fan of wrestling all my life, but then I found something new.
No, definitely. I think, yeah, that's, that sounds quite a bit like what I found as well. Like I remember when I was 16, I was interested in getting into wrestling, but there was a local school, but I was too much of a chicken to go for it back then. And so it took me until I was 22 to work up the courage. Because again, like I'd always loved it, but it was one of those like, oh, actually I can go somewhere with it. And then seeing what Rev Pro was like, I was like, oh, actually I can go somewhere big with it,
Because in your area, because in your area as well, because that school's been there for quite some time, isn't it?
Yeah, I want to say 2011, 2012 sort of time. Yeah, it spawned off of the IPW school. So Corden used to be involved in that, and they'd have their sort of like, IPW school down in Kent, and then a Portsmouth-based school. And then when Corden went his own separate way, the school obviously broke from the IPW sort of like masterhead as well, I suppose. If I'm remembering my history correct. But yeah, like so they've, there's some guys who have been there since day dot, like your Lord Gideon Greys, your James Castles. They've been constant fixtures throughout. And then, you've then got people like myself, Rob Lias, Kenneth Halfpenny's just starting to do bits. Even obviously Joshua James, as all you guys will know. Yeah. Like we all started coming through sort of like after that, Obviously, even Psycho Phillips, he was there before me. He was a big part of my early days at training for sure.
So, is there any of the guys that you trained with that you still work with now?
We had pretty much those guys I've just named, all of them.
Yeah. Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, like there's a good amount still going strong. Like as with most schools, you get a lot of people who come in to give it a try. Some of them are really good at it, some of them not so much. But it's, I said this the other day, you could have all the talent in the world, but you need to have that mental capacity to do this as well. Wrestling is so much more than just what goes on in the ring. It's the up and down traveling, it's the setting up the rings and stuff like we spoke about earlier. You've got to have a real sort of like solid mentality to be able to do all of that, and then wake up on a Monday morning and go do a normal 9 to 5 to support your wrestling dream. Because, unless you're at the upper echelons of Brit wrestling, you're not making enough for a living for that. You know what I mean? So yeah, there's a lot of those guys. Curtis Chapman's obviously another one, old Mad Kurt. He's who I tag with him in Rev Pro. He started since he was a little nipper. He was good when I walked through the door. When he was probably still only about maybe 17 or 18 back then, but you could see he was good then. And he's just, as he's growing older and he's getting a bit more mature, he's really starting to find himself. And
because he brings that really old classic British style, doesn't he?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's to be honest, it's actually a shame, because he was doing a lot of that, British style. He was constantly compared to Zack Sabre Jr. at our school. Partly, I think, because of his stature as well, because he's not the biggest muscular guy. But people didn't really take much notice of it until he developed this Mad Kurt character, and he actually does less of the wrestling sort of stuff now, and gets a lot more reactions, which is a shame because he is phenomenal at it. But again, it's, as we were saying earlier, it's about that story. It's about that having something for the audience to buy into and really get a taste for. And yeah, he's found that himself, and he's found a way to keep it going and only grow, even when there haven't been shows.
So,
I mean,
go on, Dave.
sorry, Carl.
No, go on,
I was just saying, you kind of, you improve and you you kind of shine by being around better wrestlers, don't you? You know, same as football,
That's it.
same as any other sport. You know, around better wrestlers, you wrestle better, don't you? So who's kind of been someone you've worked with that you've really gone, car? They're like in a different league, but you know.
So I remember the first one, which I was really, really shocked by. I mentioned this on another podcast a few weeks back, but it was Doug Williams. So I'd actually, when I was a 17-year-old, I'd gone over to America, just do the classic Florida parks, sort of like me and the mother. And I just discovered TNA. And so one of the things I really wanted to do was go and watch a live taping because they did it out of Orlando. And so Doug was over at the time with tagging with Nick Aldis as Magnus in, I think they were the British Invasion or something.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And right. And my mum knows nothing about wrestling. But she knew Nick because of Gladiators when that came back, and he was Oblivion or the big girl on Gladiators, right? So I was end of the show being the fan and queuing up for a picture with AJ Styles in the ring. And there was a sort of like, I think a group of people from Preston, I think they had on their flag, were also in the audience. So Doug and Nick came out sort of like to pose with pictures with them afterwards, because obviously being the British guys. And so my mum saw Oblivion, who she recognised, so actually went and got a picture with them. And then when I sort of like finished my queue with AJ and went over to see her, they were still out. So she took me over to meet them as well. So, you know, that was all quite cool as, like I say, a little 17-year-old. And then fast forward to, I think I've probably only been on shows for 18 months, possibly. So like training for 2 years, on shows for 18 months. And myself and Rob were in this mini storyline in the Contenders division on Andy's main shows. And we were at a Sitting Bull show. And I remember the whole storyline was going to revolve around, I had an injured knee from a Portsmouth Guildhall show earlier that week. And I was going to be wrestling Robbie, and his sort of like Gob character, it was sort of like just starting to come through, to the wonderful Rob Lyons we know now. And we were, so like he was going to go over like by essentially the first time of actually cheating. And then something happened on the card. I remember Marty was meant to be on it, but he got a big cut in the eye the day before. There was so many different card changes that in the end, I wrestled Rob with me getting a quick roll up from the finish. So the match almost went to the exact same, just instead of me tapping out to this half crab on my injured knee, I got the reversal into a pin. And the winner went on to face Doug Williams. So that was really that was I found that out as I walked through the door of the venue. It wasn't even like we, you know, at the start of training, we were told this is what's going to be the plan for your match, blah blah blah. Work on that. Quilden went off to the show. We went down after training, and he's like, "Yeah, it's all changed. This is now happening." And just, it's a real shame because obviously I was having to sell the leg the whole time through my match with Doug, and I would love to have seen that match back, but the card got corrupted, the hard drive got corrupted, so it will never see the light of day. But I remember at the time, just there were things that Doug just does which are just so smooth and so like seamless, you know, going from hold to hold. And the way it was the first time I'd actually had like my opponent talking to me in the ring and talking through it, like without trying to be discreet and do it in all the small spots you think you know when you're a trainee, when it's so much more simpler, you know what I mean? And so yeah, that was definitely a big learning curve for me, such an early part of my career. And then I've wrestled a few others. I wrestled Martin Stone on a cockpit, which again, he allowed me to do a lot more of my stuff than I was expecting him to. And he really made me feel confident in myself as a wrestler as well, which was good. We built the match around, because we were both faces essentially, we built the match around him taken control early on, and then he basically says, and then it'll come back and you'll do something here, and then we'll go into the finish. And I remember halfway through the match, just the switch happened where I was to take control, and my mind went blank because like, crap, what am I going to do? So, and he just went, take control, do whatever, right? And it's like to take control, do whatever. And I remember just grabbing him and just giving him the snap suplex. And I remember talking to Gideon Gray afterwards about it, and he just sort of said like, it just looked like I had so much intent behind it, what I was trying to do and stuff. And I was like, honestly, that was an off the cuff something. Just what am I doing? Wrestler 101 suplex. You know what I mean? And but then I sort of like really started to, you know, I learned to breathe. I learned to take a time. And I'm sure if I was to watch that match back again now, I'd be cringing at so much stuff. Like there's one spot I can remember, I know for a fact I messed up and I'm going to cringe. But, you know, after the match, so like Martin got on the mic, cut a promo, and he, you know, he put me over a little bit, which was never part of the plan, was never part of the deal. And that came from him. And that was a very, you know, very humbling moment as well. So yeah, I definitely learn how to give back as well. I think that's probably what I learned the most from that match. You know, like he could have just gone in. I was a jabroni. I was a contender. I was being billed as the lowest of the low, yet he still allowed it to be a competitive match and allow it to look like I actually had a chance. You know what I mean? And yeah, it's just probably those two for me, I would say, are my, off the top of my head anyway, they're the big names I've worked with which have given me that learning curve, you know.
Did you ever think that you would train this early on as well?
In what regard, sorry, do you mean?
Well, I mean, like training in the training school, training others.
Okay, so no. So I remember around the time of the discussions for this beginner class to start, I was doing, there was a girl who, God bless her soul, wasn't the greatest by any means. You know, she would almost take 2 steps forward and 3 steps back. Like she just really, really struggled, but I can't fault her enthusiasm. She always wanted to give it a go. And she was always wanting to do one-to-one training sessions. So I'd help out on a few of those, sort of like just in the hour before our main training session. So I was going to be down at the school anyway. I just went down a bit earlier. And as I was going through all of that, like I say, they were planning with starting these beginner classes with Rishi Ghosh. And so like called and pulled me to one side and sort of said, look, you do a one-to-one with this trainee. Would you be interested in taking a class and actually trying things? So I think he'd probably seen I was helping some of the sort of like newbies in the main classes just with the bare basics. And so I just basically said, yeah, you know, like we did a couple of weeks, me and Rishi together, just so the initial class would get to know us. And then we started to alternate weeks. And yeah, that went on well. And Rishi ended up going off and doing his own thing with Quality Wrestling Academy. And because of that, I took over the beginners class full time every week. And I actually remember at the time thinking, like, why on earth am I being asked to do it? Like, as much as, you know, I can teach anybody how to do a bump. I can teach anybody how to put a headlock on. But there's so much more that comes with it. But I think it was a blessing in disguise, because as much as I was teaching people, I was having to think about why I was teaching it, which then made me think about why am I doing things, which then affected my work a lot more. And I think that initial period of me starting to teach, that 6 to 8 months, I just went straight up, you know. For me personally, I felt I just got better as a wrestler. I got, you know, I got into a good rhythm with it, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely.
It's all about the communication, isn't it? You know, I mean, you obviously must be really good at communicating, you know, how to do things to the trainees.
I like to think so, you know, like, again, there's a lot of people, you know, a lot of people have learned different ways. You know what I mean? So I always try to adapt my my training skills, I suppose. You know, for myself, in all honesty, I'd never really met somebody with autism before, or that I was aware of, sort of like growing up. And then I suppose because of the nature that wrestling is, of being that sort of like safe space, it attracts a lot more sort of like autistic people. And I've really learned now how to deal with that, not just in wrestling, but in my general life as well. But again, the only reason I've learned how to do that is because of the coaching and because of having to be articulate and explain things. And if something doesn't go right, not throw a hissy fit about it, think about how to adapt, etc. And you know, at the end of the day, that's what you then need to do in wrestling as well. Like, to take it back to an actual match scenario, if something goes wrong, you can't just throw your arms up in the air and storm out, because there's a paying audience there. You know what I mean? Like, you need to work about what are you going to do to get it all back on track.
I mean, we've been down that road before as well, haven't we, Dave? Cameras have gone down.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
I've got Dylan looking at me at the other side of the room, or at the other side of the venue, like, yeah, camera's dead. And I'm stood there with the microphone, still trying to call this match that's going on. He's like, yeah, I know. Right. Okay.
Right.
We'll think about this in a minute. Yeah, we get there eventually, but these things happen, don't they? They always do.
No,
and wrestling is definitely the one place where nothing is ever guaranteed.
Oh, never. You know, it could be the smallest thing that then creates the biggest problem. You know, but that's showbiz, baby.
It is. It is.
That's live shows. You know.
Dave, have you got anything else to add before we leave tonight?
No, I think it's just been an honour and a privilege to have Dan here. You know, I very much look forward to SFP reunited. You know,
Me as well.
Yeah, the modern day was it 4 guys in jeans meme? You know, that's what I think of SFP. Staying
Maybe
relevant.
we'll learn some sea shanties when we come back.
Get pumped and get some tattoos. You know, yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to being back. You know, I said it in that promo I discussed earlier on the last show we did. You know, like that was as close to a shoot as it's probably going to be, because I am legitimately wanting to come back. You know, I want to win the tag belts. You know, SFP had very good chance in that tournament. I want to win that, and then I either now go for the vacated UPW belt, or I go after Adam Exted. But my goal is to be the first Triple Crown UPW champion. So, you know, I've got something I want to work towards when I get back in the ring, whenever that will be. But like I say, that can only be done while having a lot of fun along the way, and have a lot of fun with SFP, definitely.
Well, there you go. You heard it here first. That is the goal for when we ever get back to a live show. If we ever get back to any live shows, I'm sure we will at some point in the future. Dan, thank you very much for joining us here on this podcast today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, and honestly, thanks for having me. And it's been lovely to see you both again. It's good to see you both so well.
Well, you know, we're trying.
Yeah.
We're all trying.
Cheers, guys. Enjoy your chat with Rob next week.
Oh, I'm sure we will. We'll ask him these similar questions next week. Dave, thanks for joining us. I shall see you next week.
Indeed. Thank you very much.
And guys, thank you very much for listening. We will see you next time. Good night.